It's 8:30. We'll call to order. Roll call, please.
John Righeimer,
Here.
Stacy Hessel, Mark Helwig, Tom Duffy, Jeff Haney.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Pledge of allegiance.
With allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Certification of compliance, please.
This meeting has been noticed to the public and news media as required by Section 19.84 of the Wisconsin statutes.
Thank you. The meeting agenda is set. We'll move on to public comments. I have Linda Zomer. Anybody online for public comment? Doesn't look like it. Approval of minutes for previous meeting.
Make a motion to approve the minutes of 10/10/24.
I'll second that.
Motion made Mr. Hellwig, second by Ms. Hessel. Any discussion? All those in favor? No. Anybody opposed? Okay, minutes approved. Treasurer's report is included. We'll move to the Finance Department report.
We will start with sales tax for the year. October was up again by quite a bit. Actually, October and September were kind of flipped. The October number is what usually is September. September is what usually is October. The whole state was up again in October. So I think there was just something goofy with some of the July settlements that maybe got moved into October versus September this year. And it was a statewide thing. We're just under 3 million projection for the year. Kind of right where we've been the whole time. It's varied a little bit, but right around 3 million. Moving on to the budget performance. We're at about 83% of the year right now, 10 out of the 12 months. One thing I do want to say is, since this was an early meeting, I ran this report on October 29th. Normally it would be October 31st. There could be some payables that happened on the 31st that would not be in here because we usually pay on Thursday. We're in good shape. If I look at the revenues, even without the fund balance draw that was planned, the raw data is we're at 83%. So even without that $750,000, we're on pace on the revenue side. The expenses are in even better shape. And when I do the net of fund balance draw, we're at 87% on the revenue side and at 76% on expenses if I net out that transfer to HHS, which we're hoping to not have to do. It's looking like we might have to do a little bit this year. HHS is showing a little over $1 million deficit right now. Again, that's not totally atypical to be at that position right now because of the lag and some grant funding claims. The expenses are under budget, which is good. And then highway's in really good shape. It does show a little bit of a deficit, but I have not done the transfer from CIP yet for equipment that they've purchased. So that will flip that around. It'll flip back a little bit once I book depreciation as well too, but we're in good shape for this time of year. Any questions on any of that? CIP purchases for October, we had a few, another squad with a build out. They're working on the ambulance building, doing that. Additional sleeping quarters, I believe, is what they're working on. IT had some purchases. They worked on the small courtroom, adding some AV and cameras in there, and then got some battery backups, which is essential for safeguarding our data. Zoning had some engineering for a dam, and maintenance, I believe that's the second half of the fan array. Moving on to the changes in the 25 budget from the last meeting. So I'm going to flip quickly through these first few pages because we've been over. This is a slide. Yep. We've looked at these first few quite a few times already this year. The first one with the numbers, Lynn, if you want to go to page 16, right there. So the changes that have occurred since the county board meeting, the board did approve $15,000 additional funding for Nemocoggan Transit. To make that money up, I reduced our contingency fund in the general fund by that amount. So what you're seeing there is a reduction of $15,000, both in other programs of general government and the expenditure total overall. Any questions on that?
What was I know there was a big push for the transit increase. What was the initial thinking behind it? So I don't know if I can do a quick review of that.
I think I can help you on that.
Well, I'm asking him.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, I didn't push for it.
No, I know. What was the opposing argument? I guess that's what I was, to not
them.
increase it.
They have a very healthy fund balance, and we just got their audit from 23 this week, and they added another, I believe, just over 100,000 of fund balance again for last year. The data we had at the time, which included the 22 audit and their fund balance, we didn't feel they needed the extra money. They have in excess of 1 year of operating expenses and fund balance. And I know that they do have to purchase things ahead of time and get reimbursed. So they do need a fund balance, but.
And then taking it out of the contingency, I mean, other than just knowing that it's taken out of that, any comment on that or?
We haven't had to dip into contingency, so I'm
sorry?
We haven't had to dip into contingency.
In the past.
So I'm not fearful of.
Not fearful of it. Okay. And then, I'm sorry, Mark, what was
I was just gonna say that, well, we also, or the transit also has, there's funds, I don't know the amount, but, the state is going to be, once they figure out what they're doing there, requesting funds back from the transit, and I believe it's around 300,000, somewhere around there. So, when that happens, they have to have that, it's just sitting there. But when they say, okay, we want it back now, I really don't know what that
Yeah, curious.
is
They have to make sure it's been used for the intended purposes.
exactly.
But my question is, instead of taking, continually having us increase, why are they not having to do what the other agencies are doing, increase their prices, things like that? They've been at $2 a ride for several years. So I'm just, we've had to assist other agencies in getting some increase in revenue besides our increase. So I'm just wondering why they're not using.
They have raised their prices this past year, correct, Ron?
Oh, I understood her at the meeting to say that they didn't, but
Yes, they did. Yeah, because of, they know that we have to be, or they have to bring in funds just like anybody else, so they did up to their prices. Not much, but
How much is this an LCO and county funded
yes,
joint project?
yes. 100,000, I believe.
I believe LCO this time around is less than Sawyer County. But previous years, LCO is funded more for into transit. But getting back to what Stacy was talking about, transit did raise their fares. And then come to find out after we looked at it a while, the ride count was way down. People could not afford it because a lot of those people that are riding are either handicapped or elderly. So I know Carrie worked to drop it down a little bit to make it more easier. And I know people donate money for tokens to help them, handicapped people, and I am one of them that do that. But other than that, LCO right now is not paying as much on this time around as Sawyer County.
Is it because they paid more in the past?
Right.
What,
I guess I can't answer why that is,
Yeah.
John, other than the fact that that's what my understanding is.
is there a quick percentage wise, how much LCO uses it versus the county? Is it 50-50, 80% county, 20%?
I wouldn't have that data.
Do we know?
We do have Carrie
Carrie
on
is
line.
on.
I'd like to ask. Carrie, can you help us out a little bit? I'm fumbling through and so is Ron, so.
Yes, I apologize. Can you guys hear me?
Yes,
Okay, perfect. Yes, so we are asking for 170 from LCO. And the reason for that is that they do additionally to their local match, they do fund the entire weekend service. So they give us $130,000 to operate on the weekend. So they fully pay for the weekend service, which Sawyer County residents are able to use also. So we have asked them for an increase. I have not heard yet if that has been approved or denied, but that's kind of the reason behind it. So additionally, they give us the weekend funding.
So they're giving 130, you're asking for 170, is that it?
No, they give us the 130 in addition to the 170.
In addition to the 170, okay.
Right. And that is, we allocate everything different on the weekends. So we bill them for everything on the weekends, wages, fuel. They pay 100% of the weekend services, which Sawyer County residents are able to use.
And what is the breakup as far as Sawyer County usage versus LCO usage? And roughly?
I don't know that we could actually track that, as we don't ask them if they're tribal members when we are registering them in our system. We definitely could in the future if we needed to track that information, but I would say it's probably about even. You know, we have the two buses that run continuously all week on the reservation, throughout the reservation, and then we have the one that runs through into town and back out to the casino where we have our transfer station, and that gets utilized by both tribal members and non-tribal members. And then we have the doorstop service also during the week and on weekends that gets utilized by both.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions on that? Thank you, and thank you, Mark. And Mike.
All right, moving on to the next slide. A little hard to see with that drop down there. So the general fund expenditures again are down 15,000. The general fund levy is down 15,000. Debt service, there's a lot of movement there between debt service and capital, which I can get into a little bit more. It looked like in talking with Andy that the communication project was going to be on hold. So what I am proposing is that we move up a couple of CIP purchases that were going to be in 2026 to 2025. Is that not
I
correct?
think that's a good idea. So we'll put, oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, given the timing and that it didn't go through the board last month and it's not coming up this month, we won't be able to complete the borrowing before the end of the year, which is, and Mike can explain that, but the timing wise, we would need to bond before the end of the year in order to include the debt service payment in next year's budget. So it doesn't mean that we won't bond, it's just we won't bond until next year. So debt service payment won't be till 2026.
Correct.
Because we were anticipating that it was going to move ahead and we would bond before the end of this year. If we're not going to do that, it's fine. You'll approve the project at some point if the board chooses and approve the bonding. It's just that we won't make the borrow until next year sometime. And then debt service payments would be in the 26 budget. Does that make sense?
To me, because I'm not a finance person, but as long as we will have the funds when we need it.
Yeah, I mean, if you were going to like buy a house and pay, borrow, and you were gonna make an annual payment rather than a monthly payment, if you borrowed before the end of this year, you'd make a payment sometime next year. So now we're not gonna agree to borrow until sometime in 25, which means our payment that we have to budget for is not until 26 budget.
No, I got it.
Okay. So potentially, maybe, and this is just a maybe, based on the trend of interest rates, the further out we can borrow might be better because potentially the market might be better from an interest rate standpoint. But it's still, at some point, the board, I anticipate, will approve a project, approve a budget, and approve a bond to pay for that project.
Thank you. And I apologize.
That, and what Mike's done, because as he's talked about before, we want to kind of leave or have a even
Mill rate.
rate. So that's why he's taken out some debt service and increased some capital projects to keep it level.
So we can talk a little bit more about it later, but the net effect on debt service was about $17,000 reduction from what was presented last month. And then capital improvements is down substantially because I removed 2.75 million and put in 365,000. So that changed a lot. Highways unchanged. Other funds, which would include transit now, is up 15,000. And then the total expenditures is down that 17,000 in debt service. Any questions on that? So the next one looks at the proposed levy. Operating levy unchanged, debt service again is reduced by 17,000. And then the total levy, again, that same 17,000. So the increase is 3.36% from last year. Moving on, this one, levy limit calculation just shows the new amount. It was 13,319,000 previously, now it's 302. Another breakdown of the levy components. A little further breakdown is the next slide. General fund, again, reduced by 15,000. Next three are unchanged. Transit increasing by 15,000. Debt service decreasing by 17,000, and the overall, again, down 17,000 from what was previously presented. Continued on to the next slide. That whole special purpose levy is unchanged. Overall levy down 17,000. Again, the net is at 3.36%. And the mill rate remains unchanged. $17,000 on $6 billion in valuation doesn't affect a two-digit levy rate. The next slide, ambulance service is unchanged. Next slide, library is unchanged. Next slide is the other outside organizations beyond libraries, and there you can see the change in transit funding. The next slide we've looked at before. It shows the authority to levy or support those different projects. This slide then is the adjusted CIP debt issue. The things that were added that were going to be in 2026 are for maintenance, adding windows to the, not adding, replacing windows in the Huber wing. It's actually kind of nice doing that at the same time as the air handler and AC unit in the Huber wing, getting it all done in 1 year. And then the other change then would be the Hazer project for the sheriff's department. That again was going to be proposed for 2026. So that 365,000 replaces what would have been the first year repayment on the debt on the 2.75 million for the communication project. So that brings the net CIP to just over $2 million for next year. This then would be the updated debt service repayment schedule for 5 years plus all remaining years combined. The change from the one that I presented at the last meeting was that CIP has increased a little and that whole column of the $2.75 million is removed. The CIP will be a different in how we issue that compared to previous years. Previous years, we've done CIP through a bond issue, through a bid process. This year I'm proposing working with our depository Franson Bank that will save about $35,000 in debt issuance costs. The interest rate is quoted as good as 4.57. It would be about $30,000 in interest, well, $30,519 if we hold it for 4 months. So this is another change with the debt issues we've done in the past. We've had at least a 2-year repayment. This would be a 4-month, so that we're saving both closing costs and interest on that. The last page is that levy rate history we've looked at, and even with the $17,000 reduction, it doesn't change the 2-digit levy rate. Any questions on the revised budget? All right, then moving on to the courthouse fees. There is one change from what was presented. This is a late change. If you go to page 13 of fees or 41 of the packet, these are changes to Health and Human Services. We just got these either Monday or last Thursday. Andy, if you want to speak to any
Yeah,
of them.
they came to us last week. They were presented to the Human Services Board Tuesday night, and the Human Services Board changed them. or approved the changes. Number of them are eliminated some fees that were not things they don't do anymore, and some were to adjust things. We're improving our Medicaid, Medicare billing. So we're changing the fee schedule to include allowable, what we're allowed to bill towards Medicaid to make sure the fees are accurate with those billings. So we've included those. Those are the only changes since the last time you've seen them, and all the changes are highlighted in red. And I guess there's a set of fees there at the bottom of that page that's on the screen. Those were found to have been approved by the board in January of 22, but had not been included in the fee book prior. So they included those as well.
I'll make a motion to approve and bring to the full board the fee schedule included.
I'll say.
Motion by Ms. Hessel, second by Mr. Haney. Any questions or discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Right, approved.
All right, and then the next thing we'll look at is the updated CIP. As previously discussed, an increase of $365,000 to offset the reduction due to the communication project.
The communications project, what is that again?
The 2.75 million, the towers and
The Aren't we in limbo on that right now?
Great, that's not included.
Oh, okay, got it.
Yep. So the increase in CIP replaces what would have been the first year payment of that.
Page 59. Yep. 59.
I'll make a motion to approve the CIP as listed.
I'll second that.
Motion by Ms. Hessel, second by Mr. Hellwig. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed?
The next slide is the FTE update, which is unchanged from the last presentation. We did approve that one. As did we approve the salary grid, which is the next slide. That's unchanged from the last meeting.
We're at, are you doing the Veterans Park?
We're not quite there yet.
Oh,
So the next one, which would need a motion, is the setting the levy for 2025 at 14,872,693. That is that updated amount with the reduction of 17,000 as previously presented.
What page are you on, Mike, please?
62.
62 on the packet.
I would make a motion to approve the resolution to adopt the 2025 Sawyer County budget property tax levy to the $14,872,693 to be collected in 2025.
I'll second that.
motion, Mr. Hellwig, second by Ms. Hessel. Any questions? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion approved.
All right, the next is a resolution for the bank loan. This is the $2,003,000, $460 CIP loan note.
I'll make a motion to approve the loan amount as shown. Do you need me to read the whole thing? No.
I'll second it.
Motion, Ms. Hessel, second, Mr. Haney. Any questions? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes.
All right, next we do come to the resolutions for the Veterans Honor Park. Yeah, would you like to?
There's just a summary.
I'm gonna give you a hard copy. There's just, all the hard copy is one change at this point of removing the apostrophe. So it's not veterans possessive, it's veterans plural honor park. So I'll just start and Ms. Hessel I'll turn it over to her. So what this resolution reads, I guess I'll just explain that Ms. Hessel came to me inquiring or asking to present a proposal, a resolution to amend the budget to allocate $250,000 from Resource Development Fund to a Veterans Honor Park budget. And I'll let her explain more about the Veterans Park itself. And I know she's talked to some of the board members. I did not put a signature line on here because I didn't know if this committee was going to forward this on to the board, or she has other sponsors that she can talk about. But the purpose of the resolution, the effectiveness of what it would do is it talks a little bit about that we do maintain a resource development fund that we have allocated funds to. We do have a balance there. Mike can talk a little bit about the balance when we get to that. And would set it aside for a Veterans Honor Park project for potential acquisition and development of that park. And it would amend the existing budget. It would not have a effect on the levy or the mill rate, because we'd just be moving funds from allocating funds we already have on hand to a specific project. Probably a good point here. I can just turn it over to you to explain more about the.
Sure. So I just come to you with a concept and I apologize for bringing it at this time in the game of the budget, but it's a very dear to my heart project, and it's fitting that it's the week before Veterans Day that we would consider this project. So Sawyer County, Hayward specifically, does not have a veterans park like a lot of other communities. If you've seen the one in Spooner or Rice Lake, they're very monumental to their communities, and it's very respectful. We have a significant veterans population in our county, and I think that they should be honored just as much as we honor the fishing, the big fish. We don't have a park that honors the veterans that make it accessible for us to fish. So anyway, that being said, I just am at this point asking for approval to use the funds out of the resource funds to develop this concept further. I'm not going to go into specifics other than that, but just to say that this is something that we could use those funds for. And if you wanted to, Mike, talk about that, I just don't want to have any false pretense of what we're doing.
Well, I'll talk about the balance. So there's right now $881,000 in this fund. It's one that we did just dump about half $500,000 in there from 2022. And we are pulling out $400,000 for that bridge or dam project for 2025. We established this fund so that we could, when we have money to put in there, to draw from that instead of putting it on the tax levy. So that's what the money is used for. We can afford it. 250,000 would fit. There'd still be, after we draw for the dam, there'd be 481,000. So that there is money there. I can't speak exactly to what it was set up for and what the money was intended for when it was put in.
Yes, kind of jumping on that. So I know I've talked to a few of the board members that have longer tenures here. But we have not been able to find anything like a resolution or a policy in place on how the Resource Development Fund is to be used. Looking back, there was money that was feeding that budget from stumpage revenues on an annual basis. But when the county budgets got tighter, that stopped. The last couple of years, starting in 22, we were able to move some fund or surplus dollars from the 21 budget into resource development, and then we did the same thing with $22. So that's how there's money in there. Yes, and like Mike said, since that time, we've been using it as the match for the dam grants we've been getting to rehab or to replace dams, the last 2 dam projects. So
And also to be clear, I have approached private investors, and that's not something that I could accomplish. I've been trying over several years to do this. My stepdad was a veteran. He passed away. So I feel it fitting to use this fund, but also with the clarity that we can reimburse some of those funds with grants. So I don't think that it's a loss of that fund. I think that, applying for grants for a veterans park, there's a lot of options there, but I can't do it nobody can do it as just a person. You can't just go apply for grants on your own. So you have to be part of an organization that can apply for those grants. And Sawyer County government would be one of those that could apply for grants to finish this project. But you have to do the project first and then you get reimbursed. It's like all of the other weirdness that we have with our agencies applying for grants, that you have to spend the money to get the money. And so this is just a starting point. And I think it can be accomplished.
I think that's a great point. Do we have somebody to do that then, to seek out these grants if we were to approve this?
we don't have a specific person, but we have people that
That could manage
do that,
that
yeah.
process?
Yep, right.
We want you to do it, Andy.
Yeah.
Mark,
I'm
you had a
sure-
question?
I mean, we will find them and we'll,
Yeah,
pursue any dollars that we can.
Mark?
I would like to make a motion to approve allocating funds for veterans honor park since I'm a 26-year Army veteran.
I'll second.
Do anything you can
I'll
possibly.
second. Motion, Mr. Hellwig, second by myself, Mr. Righeimer. Any questions or comments? Sorry about that. All those in favor? Anybody opposed? Motion passes.
So just when we're done today, just give me a few minutes after the meeting. I'll add the signature block for the finance committee, and then you can sign it.
This goes to admin and to the full county board then, correct?
It's on the
Yes.
admin committee agenda
Okay.
as well. Point out that in the resolution, it allocates the funds to the budget, but then it puts the admin committee kind of in charge of identifying a location and overseeing the project.
Okay, investment review and update.
So we had another good month of interest income. If you look at the column on the right, the rates did drop about 15 points maybe from last month, which is to be expected. This is September. The Fed dropped the rates in September, so I would expect to see a little bit of an adjustment. I did check CD rates yesterday, and they actually were up a hair from the week before. So for a 12-month, they're at about, the range I think is 4.15 to 4.4. And it was down a little bit further than that the week before. So they're still not horrible, but we're getting really good returns on our money markets right now still too. So I think maybe next month could start the discussion again if we want to lock in some more money or not. See how things shake out a little bit. Any questions? Moving on to ambulance. We're looking at October through September, or 12-month periods. That is all the same. Starting with the aging schedule. I'm going to draw you down to the second part of that chart there. And over to the right, what we're wanting is that percent current to keep increasing, and we're up a little over last month, and we want the one on the far right, the percentage equal or greater than 120 days to decrease, and that did decrease for the month. Again, we've really seen a nice downward trend there.
So you want our one to decrease?
We do, because those are the ones that are way out there. We want that less, and we want current more. Yep. So we are moving in the right direction. The next slide is the average calls per month. We're kind of like it's been for a while now. We're not where we were 12 months ago, but we're tracking where we were 24 months ago, those periods. We're working on, which I've got one new slide to show you later, but we're working on what we can do to get numbers up. Obviously you don't want any calls, but if we're gonna have them, we want them consistent. Yeah. The average billed per month, again, same story. That actually the last 3 years are kind of leveling out now, but we're up over 2 years ago and a little down from a year ago. The average collected, similar story, where there's a little bit more gap from over 2 years ago, but we're down a little bit more from a year ago as well. And that's due to the percentage, which we're looking at next, percent collected per month. We're running just under 36%. We were just under 40% a year ago, but we're at 32% 2 years ago. So it's been a little more volatile, but we've also changed companies 2 different times in this period. We're on our 3rd company since Andy and I have been here. And the first company was new then. The next slide then is the dollars billed and collected. We're actually billing at an all-time high now. Next slide. Little over $1,500 a call. Collections are not the most ever because last year we had a higher collection percentage, but still pretty solid. Our goal is to be at that 50%, which is going to be really hard because a very high volume of our calls don't even pay at 50%. So it's going to be very hard to ever reach that. The next slide is where the calls are going. Again, the closer you are to the city of Hayward, the more calls there are. Hayward, town of Hayward, Bass Lake, and then Winter, which is our probably second largest grouping of people around the city of, or village of Winter. And then you can see the rest. The net income, we're actually at a positive of $52,000 ambulance service through September. So that is good news. I think our billings are getting a little bit better. We're down staff a little bit too, so that's why expenses are under. The write-offs had a below average number of write-offs last month, which has kind of been the trend. 3 out of the last 4 months have been. So that means hopefully we're doing a little better job collecting. And then the amount going to collections, that number has been bigger for a few months here, but I think we're cleaning up those final ones with LifeQuest. So we're getting more true figure of what we're going to collect probably. This is part of why you're seeing our agent schedule of over 120 days going down too. They're writing off some of them. The next slide is the dispatch calls versus billed runs, the percentage. And we're just a little under average for September. Again, it's for whatever reason, it's been more volatile since we switched from the original billing company to LifeQuest. There's really no connection there. It's just how it's gone, but the collection agency doesn't really dictate if it's billed or not, so I don't know why that is. And then these are just a couple more slides looking at billed versus calls. The 2024, the percentage is down a little bit, pretty close to 2022. But then when you flip to the 12-month period, that's where it kind of levels off a little bit more. Almost feels like it's a little seasonal. That's why the 12-month period is different than the calendar year. And as we get all of the calendar year, and it should obviously get closer. This is the new slide then. This is ambulance transports, one thing we've tried focusing on. One more slide, Lynn. Is increasing our transports because that is paid out at a very high rate. You're assured of getting paid. And so you can see where we started tracking that is, well, we're able to track it through the billing company that took over in April. So starting in April, you can see there was a couple months of an upward trajectory, then a down month, and now we're back kind of where we were 2 months ago. So the top blue line is the billed amount. The middle red one or brown, whatever that is what's allowable. So that is always going to kind of follow with the billed amount. It's going to vary a little bit, but that trajectory will be the same. And then the upper green and the lower blue are the running average. So that will smooth out as time goes. But what we want is to keep creeping up a little bit. So this is just new information, but something we've been focusing on. John's worked hard to work with the hospitals to try to get more transports. We lost the majority of them about 3 years ago for whatever reason, and we're just trying to get them back. Any questions on that?
Those transports, that's probably the most impactful way to even improve the ambulance situation, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, because you're never going to collect it all, you're always going to have a subsidized.
Yes, even the transports can be subsidized, but it's more
Like revenue received though, right? I mean, it's good. Okay, good job.
Well, good job, John. He's the one that's been working on it. The next report then is the one we get right from EMS EMC. It's very good raw data right now. The charts aren't going to make sense until we get 12 months in because again, if you want to just go down one slide or a little bit there, up again now. So you can see those line graphs. That green line, it's their running total, but it's starting from 0. So it's, got such an upward trajectory. After 12 months, that will be smoothed out and then it'll be more of an accurate running average. And then, you'll be able to see the variations like we have here. So that'll start making more sense once we hit next April. But the good information we do get from these reports right away is who's paying for the runs. And you can see Medicare Advantage, are very, very high percentage. The first couple pages are the raw data. But then when you get down to the pie chart, that shows the accounts receivable by payer. So there you can see the breakdown. The biggest one is green at 32%, and that is patient, which is actually good. They're sometimes harder to collect, but we get a better percentage than Medicare, but Medicare is 13%, Medicare Advantage is 21%. So you can just see the breakdown. This is the accounts receivable. So it's not necessarily what was the percentage that was billed. It's what's outstanding. But it gives you an idea at least. And there you can see the vast majority on the left are current, which is what we want. Next slide is just their accounts receivable reconciliation report. So then, if there are no questions about that, There is a resolution before you with some updated fees from ambulance service. Andy, if you want to hit on that one?
Yeah, it's gonna be short because brought this to public safety. I wanted to make finance aware of it, but public safety is postponed. Did not act on it. Now I'm bringing it back. The concern is that the percent change or the dollar change was pretty significant. So I'll be bringing it back to public safety with some amended amounts. When we were going through with the billing company and the fee schedule, we realized that these fees hadn't been adjusted. Some of them hadn't been adjusted in 6-7 years. So we were, gone to the billing company, asked them to provide us some comparables. They've done that. We've also talked to some other services and came up with these numbers, but we'll be presenting a adjusted proposal to public safety next month. No,
That's all I got.
Thank you. Any future agenda items? With none, meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.